Hello there, Kat Fitzpatrick here with what will be a portion of the reading of For the Love of Vietnam, a war, a family, a CIA official, and the best evacuation story never heard. This is a book project that I've been working on since 2012, and no wait, yes, 2012, sorry, it's been so long, 11 years. It's been a labor of love, something that I didn't really choose to do so much as chose to come in through me, however you want to interpret that. Sometimes it was a joy and sometimes it was a slog, and I am just so thrilled and happy about how things have turned out. I'm doing this audio video reading for my nieces and nephew in Hawaii, and also for anyone who is interested. I'm going to say a little bit first about the cover. I actually took this picture on the island where my dad evacuated out of. It is Phu Quoc, which is in the very southernmost part of Vietnam. I went there in 2015 to follow in his footsteps as part of my research for this project. I drew these pictures with the help of some resource material. This is myself and my brother Jimmy. I also drew those based on photographs, and I'll start out by reading the back. This is a narrative nonfiction, meaning that it is based in truth, but written in such a way that it's accessible to people. It's historical. I did a lot of historical research, and I am hoping that it is educational and also empowering. It is a beautiful area, and so quiet and peaceful by day. By night, it is a war. That is an excerpt from an actual letter home that my mom wrote. Her name was Nancy Louise Welch. Her maiden name was Rabdo, so Nancy Louise Rabdo Welch. She wrote that in February 1975 after we'd been living there already almost 9 months or 8 months. We moved there in July of 1974. And this is the rest of the book jacket. It's not often that a family moves to a war zone, but in 1974, Saigon was supposedly safe. The US government had said it so after the Paris Peace Accords the year before. CIA officer James E. Welch certainly believed it to be so. So when his family joined him after 2 long years of separation, there were high hopes for good times. However, it wasn't long before the truth crept in. As the family struggled to maintain a normal routine, visiting the zoo, going to the beach, taking river cruises, myriad threats thrust themselves into the everyday lives. Violent demonstrations, Viet Cong scares, and the sound and sight of artillery fire. By March 1975, things were truly falling apart. Soon the family would flee, but what of Mr. Welch and his work? A confirmed company man, he stayed behind to do his duty. Soon, however, he was torn between following orders and abandoning his South Vietnamese partners and striking out on his own. Sorry, let me read that part again because it's a little tricky. Soon, however, he was torn between following orders that came from the embassy, which would meant abandoning his South Vietnamese partners, or striking out on his own. Using his expertise in psychological warfare, also known as propaganda, and a heartfelt dedication to doing what's right, he orchestrated the evacuation of 1,000 people, despite the U.S. Embassy's lockdown. This book is filled with warmth, insight, and a thrilling last-minute escape, and the telling of this CIA's ultra-secret Let me try that again. Filled with warmth, insight, and a thrilling last-minute escape, this telling of the evacuation of the CIA's ultra-secret propaganda radio station is the one Vietnam story you won't want to miss. And then there's a little blurb about me, which I wrote, but I will read it for you. Fittingly told by daughter Kat Fitzpatrick, MFA, Masters of Fine Arts, this tale weaves her father's daring rescue with a history of the war and her family's own 1974-75 Vietnam experience of danger and escape. And I'm not sure how well you can see it, but that ship there is the American Challenger. That is the actual ship that they got out on. You can find it online if you searched enough. I did find a few different copies. The first couple pages are some praise for the book, which I won't read aloud, but if you ever get a chance, they're kind of neat. Oh, wait, I do have to read. Just the fact that Paul Block said that Kat Fitzpatrick's For the Love of Vietnam is simply a great read. The historical context is made vivid by the juxtaposition of her family's experience in Saigon during the final days before the fall. The final scene, this is a part I'm very honored by, the final scene, reminiscent of the ending of Schindler's List, is sure to leave readers with tears in their eyes. And that's by Paul Block, who wrote The Song of Mohicans and several other, 15 other historical novels, and is a good friend of mine. But I think he would have written that anyway. Anyway, I did want to read that one because more than one person had said there's some similarity to the story of my father's evacuation to Schindler's List, which is just very powerful. And it makes me glad that I wrote this. So my dedication is for my family and to all those affected by the Vietnam era, which is all of us, because history really does affect all of us. A lot happened in those 60s and 70s that I think still echoes today. I can't be sure, but that's something I feel like I've noticed. And then there's a little page that says, what I've created serve to open minds to understanding. Sorry, I always do this, I choke up, I'm sorry. May what I've created serve to open minds to understanding, open doors to healing conversations, and open eyes to seeing what was and what could be. And let me back up a little. I am sorry that my voice cracks and then but I don't want to be sorry that I have emotion, because there's a lot of emotion in the story. I just don't want the emotion right now to get in the way of telling the story. So I never want you to be sorry that you have emotions. And if I get choked up, I'm just going to breathe with it and just hang steady. When the professional audiobook recording comes out, I'm sure the reader won't have the same issue as I do. I just want to do a time check. It's about 7 minutes into this recording. I think I'll record for about 20 minutes and then continue to do that over a period of days, so people can dip in and out as needed. The first page is about my father's plaque, which is something that's hung in the wall, on the wall, and I'll talk about that. Maybe next time I start a recording, I'll show you a better picture of it, or I'll just bring it here. But my father's plaque. For many years of my youth, I would walk past a hall of fame on the way to my parents' bedroom. I said hall, which is, I think, if you remember the 96 LAU house, there was a little hall that went into the bedroom. The word I used in the book is wall. So it was, you'd walk through this little hall, and one wall was all of these framed pieces. Sometimes I would stop and examine what was hanging there and ponder the stories behind each item. There were framed letters, a few photos, a big telegram, and this plaque. Each item said that my father had done something big. But I knew him as just my good old dad, and although I knew something of the stories portrayed on the wall, I don't remember ever hearing them. It's as if I learned that he was in the CIA and saved 1,000 people by virtue of some cultural osmosis, rather than by way of celebration or commemoration. Thus it was that I inherited a great deal of archival footage that echoed with meaning but was not imbued with it, meaning that you could tell there was meaning there, but there was no tags on each thing saying what they meant or when they were, how people felt when it happened. This is how I felt when I got this letter. So it echoed with meaning. You knew the meaning was there, but it wasn't labeled. So I guess after all, that's what this entire book and all my Vietnam writing projects are about. Stringing together all the little pieces, weaving them into a fabric that tells a cohesive story. Of all things on the wall, this plaque stood out for its wood veneer, its shield-like shape, and the brilliance of its brass plate, which was long since faded. The words were impactful and also poetic, and their meaning felt way beyond my grasp, but they, like a good poem, would not let me go. And these were the words. I'm going to say them very slowly, and they're all capitalized on the plaque. To James Welch, the year of the rat. Within an accelerated timing factor, you helped activate a motivational implementation program through a coordinated approach on an orchestrated basis with all deliberate speed. Cam on, or thank you, and chuk me mam, which means good luck. I'm going to read that one more time, okay? To James Welch, the year of the rat. Within an accelerated timing factor, you helped activate a motivational implementation program through a coordinated approach on an orchestrated basis with all deliberate speed. Cam on. Even today, I have found a new element in the verse. I'd always assumed that year of the rat referred to the year of the evacuation, but that year, 1975, was actually the year of the cat or rabbit, depending if you were in Vietnam or China. The co-worker who gave my father this plaque must have known my father's birth year and included his zodiac sign to commend the qualities of his personality. Those born in the year of the rat are known to be clever, optimistic, and successful. Also, according to Vietnam Online, they have the ability to climb over a tall wall or run across a roof without falling. Or perhaps it could be said, activate a motivational implementation program through a coordinated approach on an orchestrated basis with all deliberate speed. And I wrote that on April 28th of this year, 2003. Next is a little epitaph or a quote, which is by Major Jim Keane, USMC or U.S. Marine Corps, in the book Last Men Out. It was in the epilogue on the day of April 30th, 1975. So this quote I felt might describe my father, but also me, and you'll see when I thought about writing about Vietnam, I was really scared to do it because compared to the soldiers and their suffering, my experiences seemed so small. So this is a quote. When it was all over, I was never sure whether I was going to get an award or a good kick in the ass. When it was all over, I was never sure whether or not I was going to get an award or a good kick in the ass. Again, that was Major Jim Keane, USMC, Last Men Out. All right, now we get to near death. This is a chapter that foreshadows the third part of the book. This book is written in 3 parts. The first section is called Man on a Mission, and that's just about my father and his background and how he ended up being in Vietnam. The second part is a family adventure, which is all about when the family moved there in July 1974 to the time that we evacuated in April of 1975. The third section is the final days, and that is about my dad's evacuation, or for Maya and nieces and nephews, that's your grandpa's evacuation. And I have lots of documents, but I wasn't there, and I kept hearing people wanting to hear it kind of like from his point of view. So that third part is written, it's narrative nonfiction, but I put myself right as if I was standing next to him the whole time using all the research that I did. So I quote a great writer, Tim O'Brien, about how story happening and fact happening are 2 different things, but sometimes story happening is more real or more true than fact happening. Because I could have just listed all the facts I knew, but you never would have felt like you were there. You would not have been able to get deeply into the story because you'd just be going through facts. But I have tried, I did make it as factual as I could with as much research as I could, again, many years in this. And this section, near death, is foreshadowing that. It's like it's going to be the little cliffhanger that pulls you through parts 1 and 2 to get you to part 3. Near death. And these are the boats. This is a picture. This is not in Vietnam, but these are the kind of boats that my father had access to, that the South Vietnamese Army gave him access to get his staff members from the beach all the way to the ship, which was about like a half a mile from shore. So it was a bit of an ordeal. So here he was near death. They were just about there, just about safe. But just as James E. Welch, CIA operative, was about to breathe a sigh of relief that he and those under his care had made it to safety, an armed soldier approached He approached from the naval checkpoint and shot out rapid-fire orders in words Welch could not understand. His translator stepped forward. The message he relayed to Welch was earth-shattering. Apparently, no orders had been received, allowing them to leave the beach. No matter that Welch's operation assistant had just left with his own group of 600 staff members and were now on their way to safety. He and his group of 400 were suddenly sitting ducks, trapped ashore, easy target for any soldier or wayward soul that wanted to strike out in spite. With the military situation of South Vietnam falling apart faster than anyone had ever expected, it was quickly becoming an every man for himself scenario. But there was still a possibility of escape. There had to be. "Tell them we do have permission," Welch said in low tones. Above all, nothing must set the soldiers off. Nevertheless, the angry guard and the translator exchanged several heated sentences. Both were members of the South Vietnamese army, but the translator was poised to exit the doomed country, while the other was on the verge of being abandoned by the Americans who had promised over a decade before to protect the world from evils of communism. Now they were running. What right did they have to live? What could possibly keep a forsaken soldier from killing them now? Inexplicably, the head guard chose to put off the moment of fate. He motioned to a subordinate, sending him in search of news from the commanding officer. Sweat dripped down Welch's back as they waited. He could feel his group's gaze upon him, the weight of their lives on his shoulders. The young man returned all too soon, his face a mask of anger. No one could find the commander in charge. Rumor had it that he had just left the jetty in a motorboat, fleeing with his family, just after the first group departed. When this was translated, Welch's heart dropped. The delicate thread of control was quickly fraying. Without the usual rules of order in place, the situation was in danger of spiraling out of control. Should that happen, it was quite possible that they could be slaughtered on the spot. They were so close to escape, and yet worlds away. Before Welch could form a reply, another truck pulled up and a dozen more stone-faced South Vietnamese soldiers poured out of the covered bed and ran toward them. The head guard barked out a command and troops quickly fell into formation in front of the two getaway boats. Welch eyed the M16s clutched in the hands of the uniformed men. He had never seen anything look so menacing. Their barrels were lowered toward his people. All those House 7 employees he had promised to get out. The tiniest wrong move would end in disaster, and there was no help in sight. I'll stop there for now. I hope you enjoyed this reading, and I will do more and send them along. My best to everyone out in Hawaii and everywhere.